Hello everyone, I'm Rob Smith of the In the Black VTF here at T3 Live with today's market wrap-up. So, we had some Fed minutes come out today. We're hoping for a little more volatility, but we didn't get it. The good part is the creeper rally is still intact. Here you can see the SPY still creeping up. However, it goes inside day. And anybody who watches and follows what I do, that's important as an equilibrium since we couldn't go to a higher high or a lower low. And so what I'll be looking for in the morning is if we can take that out, and it would be nice just to rest as we're still putting in higher lows and just keep walking up. However, if we do take out the lows here, potential little profit taking, anybody who's trailing up might take a little profit. So we're certainly going to be watching either side of that. Now, if we go back in here and look when the Fed came out, here we spike up, we come down, we go back up, and then we started creeping, walking back and up. And usually we like to get some more volatility out of that to trade, but what it did is it keeps the creeper rally intact inside day. And if we go to look at the QQQ went to more recent highs as the march to try and take out the all-time highs continues. So the QQQ still intact there. If you take a look at Apple, here, Apple an inside day, still walking up with, here, remember this was an inside day, and still no lower lows on the dailies for quite a while. So all this kind of stuff that's doing that is going to be important to see if the creeper rally continues, or any lower lows on the daily might trigger some profit taking. But for right now, so far so good. If we go to the small cap or IWM, got weak in the morning, came up, didn't take out the highs, but still an inside month to the upside. There's that rest and still resting in new high territory there. So creeper rally intact. Like I said, we didn't get too much out of the Fed, so we got an inside day, and I'll get to that more about that in a second. We started off the day with stuff like Fossil and the earnings coming out. And one of the things that's important when you're watching the opening or when you're watching how things gap, the question is when they gap, is it a gap and sit, a gap and reverse, or a gap and go? And certainly at this point was a nice gap and go. There were some nice entries in there. And then sideways, and then you get a nice recovery in the afternoon. You had Angie's List in the morning going gap and go to the upside and closing out near the highs. You had BSX, Creeper the same. And you can see I look for an inside 15er because if it's going to come in and try and fill the gap, when it rests like this inside, it would either go down, sideways, and measured move and try and take this out. That's not what happened. All that got disseminated up in here goes inside in the bottom of the opening range and then started moving higher. So nice move for that BSX. At the Fossil, he had the Coors purses getting wailed on. And, if you look at the daily here, you had that shooting star. And so when you're looking for relative performance in the market, when the SPY's doing nothing, inside day or going up, going down, ideally we just want to continue to look for some of this stuff that's relatively strong or weak. So if there was any weakness during the Fed, if you look at that SPY here, we like to look at that relative performance when this occurs. So it goes up, it goes down, it starts to recover, and so we still had relative weakness in FAS. And so when it started to recover, FAS actually started going down towards the lows. Not the end of the world, because when you look at perception-wise, first of all, broadening formation here, higher highs, lower lows, perception gets skewed by how much volatility is actually in the market. So when you're looking at a chart like this, you're like, oh man, look at this huge move. But then you go back to the daily, and when you're in periods of low volatility, it looks like nothing. So it's still within the realm of an upper level consolidation in there. We also had the XLE red on the day and backing off during that period too. Here you can see how that spiked up and then fell back towards the lows. Not the end of the world. I'll get to a few more of those in a second. Another one that was really nice was Zilla. And Zilla just took off here in the morning. And see what a screaming rally here. So people are always asking, how do you trade this? How can you get in on it? And so there's a lot of different ways on the long side and short side. And so here, if you followed only the 15 minutes, you can see up, inside 15, broke above that. There was your rest. Inside 15, broke above that, goes up. Inside 15 goes up to the highs. Now when it breaks here, I'm looking for any of the longer term time frames to turn red if I was going to try and short something like this. And so if we look at a 60-minute chart, you can hear it. The first time it goes, really, you can see here, almost never red on the 60. And then till up in here, it spikes up. And then once it came back through here, the opening of the 60 at 131.10, then it starts going red on the 60. And if you go back to here, you'll see that after it broke that 131.10 through here, You had an inside 15 here to get short in here for a little bit more, and if you're lucky, you covered in here. But just a couple ways to look at that. Another group that was strong today, IBB, goes to new all-time highs. And as much to many chagrin saying this thing, it's time to roll over, one of the indications here was an inside week. Rest and breaking back into new all-time high. So the IBB goes out strong, so to keep on that. So with that SPY going inside day, like I said, creeper rallies continue, but we're going to watch because we know that there's going to be a massive amount of inside days when that occurs. And so we can watch the SPY itself. We can watch stock by stock, sector by sector, and you can see the bonds TLT here is also an inside day to see if this is a continuation move of this, or they take that back up for a little corrective action. You go crude oil goes inside on the day here after an outside day, and we know the crude still putting in these series of lower highs in here. And with that weakness there, the slight weakness in the XLE, what we want to watch is stuff that goes inside day there. OIH for 1, Slob for 2, Halliburton for 3. All right, to see how these act, depending on which way crude oil and the S&P goes. So you can also look, we got a whole bunch in there to keep an eye on. WLL, NFX, you've got CLR, you've got Baker Hughes. So you got a whole mess of EARLs to look for. Amarat Hess, you've got Helmerich Payne, also in the oil services. So a bunch to keep an eye on there tomorrow, depending on the SPY and the crude oil break. With the Apple, we've got a lot of technology that stayed inside day too. You've got Microsoft, you've got Facebook here, you've got in the semis, Analog Devices, Altera here, you've got Baidu, Amazon. You can see how this Baidu acting much weaker than the S&P, albeit not in the S&P. And you look at Amazon here, inside day there to see if there's just a slight pullback within this uptrend and off to the races, a la Netflix here, which has continued to put in these higher lows and go. So a lot to keep an eye on there. You've also got the home builders going inside on the day, XHB towards the highs. I'll be watching stuff like Lennar in there. You've got also the Home Depot and the Dow. So a whole bunch to keep an eye on when you have this massive amount. So there's a few possible outcomes when you have an inside day in the S&P, and which obviously is going to give you massive inside days in the stocks, is that either we get a break one way or the other, where a simultaneous break, where they all break to the upside and everything starts running, they all break to the downside, they all start falling apart, or some go up, some go down, and that's usually more the case. And that would make it very interesting on Friday, because we'd want to see which way the S&P goes, and then on whatever stays inside on Friday would confirm or negate that move, and there's also options expiration on Friday. So hopefully those equilibriums would break and give us an even nicer break on Friday, and that's a real advantage when you're trading options on a Friday, because we know that those option premiums are shrinking down as they expire on the weekly, so we'll be keeping an eye on that. We also had LVS in the gamers, an inside day here, and that's important because it's a combination, because it's also above an inside month, and we look for that kind of stuff too. We've got earnings, of course, still on parade right now. SCTY comes out. SCTY last sale here was 57.10. The earnings are out is right now at 55, so coming back down into here. So there'll be earnings in the morning to keep an eye on, and certainly when you have those earnings come out, you want to make a decision based on what you see after the opening. You can watch an opening range. Is it a gap and go? Is it a gap and sit? Or is it a gap and reverse? So certainly keep an eye on that. So watching a massive amount of inside days starting off tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. That's going to do it for today. All right, that's today's market wrap-up. I'm Rob Smith of the Black VTF here at T3 Live. Hope you all have a great night.